And we are back. Hello, everybody. This is the Grunge Bible Podcast. My name is Ethan Shalloway. I'm joined by Chris Salona. This is episode 126, I believe.
126, right, you're right. Oh, yeah.
And it feels good to be back in the seat. It took a little bit, but we are back. U.S. soil recording one in Alabama. And Chris, you are in Rhode Island still?
Absolutely. It's good to have you back on the continent. Yeah,
it feels good. Feels like I'm really excited to be sitting here having this podcast with you. Sometimes, it's Friday. It's a Friday beers episode, which is kind of like what we have today. I know we're both have a beer. It's Friday night that we're recording a little later than normal when we're on our schedule, I guess. So it just I feel like we're back, Chris.
Yeah, we're back. I mean, that's the thing, Ethan, for you. I can only imagine what it must feel like to sit behind the SM7 once again after a long time away from the game. We missed these microphones. Yeah,
the AirPod, I think, or the Zoom audio was put into use the last 2 weeks, sadly. Yeah. So it does feel good to be back in the studio, as you say. My candle's going. I have all the proper, people watching over
the proper accoutrement or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm back in my zone. I'm comfortable.
Nice.
How are you doing?
Dude, I'm great. It's been a good week. This podcast almost slipped away from us. We kind of were running out of time. This is Friday, August 18th. This comes out on August 21st, I believe, on Monday. So, we hammered the Friday zone for a long time, the last couple of months. So it's good to return to a tradition that we started.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, so this episode, couldn't be possible. That's what I meant to say. This episode could not be possible without the support from our Patreon. We have a lot of people over there that are giving a few dollars each month to run this page. So I don't have the list in front of me, Chris, because I don't usually say this. So.
No, you never have the list. I got the list right here. I'm on the list. Yeah. I'm not on the list actually. So that's just that's just how it happens. And Ethan, I have to say,
the list is growing every week. I thought you were going to say your mom. You're not on the list, but your mom is on the top.
Yeah, well, my mom is on the list. I have to say, for the this is the first time in a while that we can't ring the bell, and I'm a little upset about that. But there's a Chains lyric that comes to my mind, in the midst of this disappointment. If we change, well, I love you anyway. Like, if you're out there, maybe you intended to become a Patreon supporter, but things got away from you, or you got busy, or something happened. But that's okay. Like, we still love you guys, and we're waiting for you with open arms when you do decide to support us. But in the meantime, definitely have to shout out our top level supporters on Patreon. They've been pulling more than their own weight for a very long time. And at this time, I would like to thank Pile of Punk, Sherry Matthews, D-Boat, Eric R. Berry, Gochu John, Keith White, Corden Stewart, Julie Van Siever, Epona, Brother Nature, Eddie Vedder got me through my second divorce, Faith Bittner, Granny Grunge, Fresh Tendonitis, Alex Long, Captain Hightop, Seattle 4 Fanboy from New Jersey, Chris LSMS, Nikki 6, Kara K, Black Hole Sean, Doug Endy, Millie, Rachel Corning, What the Fuck is Up Denny's, The Blue Owl, Fuck Soup, Jamie Lynn, Lauren Irene, my mother, Carlene Salona, still a Patreon supporter, Jade Mercado, Alexis Shannon, and Marianne. So thank you to all of those individuals, and as Levon Helm once sang, as Robbie Robertson wrote, put the load on me, and that's what they're doing.
Hell yes. That list is long, though. I mean, all things considered, I know we get to ring the bell, but I feel like we're really up there, which is great.
Yeah, we've been rolling with this list for a long time, and it's good. The more out of breath I can get, with each passing week, that means more and more people are supporting, and most importantly, more and more people are enjoying what it is that we do around here.
So let's get into this episode.
Yeah, I think we should. So being that this episode is coming out on August the 21st, August is a pretty busy month in terms of calendar dates for grunge. And we have one actually the day after this podcast comes out. It marks the birthday of Layne Staley. So Layne Staley was born back in 1967 on August 22nd. So that means that he would be 56 years old today. But he did pass away, obviously, back in 2002. So it's been just about 21, 22 years since Layne Staley passed. But we celebrate his birthday. And I think, for me at least, like when an artist passes away, their birthday is not so much a commemoration of their loss, but just you got to take this chance to celebrate their life and their accomplishments. And Layne obviously had many of those that we're all very fond of and very thankful for.
Yeah, absolutely. I always today when we were on the job, you sent over some songs, and we were kind of passing around sharing different songs to listen to, and I think that's usually what I do when an anniversary or a birthday comes up. So it was a nice day of out in the sun, listening to some Alice in Chains and doing some work, And I think that's kind of where we fell in love with the band and Layne when we were out, working. So, it was a beautiful summer day for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I totally agree. I remember that back in 2016, we were both working those manual labor jobs, as I'm sure we've belabored the point endlessly on the podcast, but fuck it, we have to do it again. Summer was the time where you and I really started to get into grunge, and specifically Alice in Chains. I remember because you were working with Andy, who came on the podcast when we did the Jerry Cantrell review, the Brighton tour, which as of right now, I don't have any new updates for the Brighton tour, but when something happens, you'll be the first to know, thanks to the Grunge Bible podcast. But yeah, Andy, I remember he was really pushing Alice in Chains for you, and I remember you'd send songs from Facelift over to me, and I'd be out in the heat working in greenhouses is what I was doing at the time. It would be like 130 degrees in the greenhouse, but I had Layne and Jerry's voices with me, so it definitely kind of timestamps that memory for me. So
speaking of artists that when you hear them brings you back to a certain time and place, I think there's a band that we need to talk about, Chris, that is pretty integral to the start of Grunge Bible. We have a lot of stories that go with, Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains, and we have these, lead singers and the archetypes of the people in the band. Yeah. And we had that experience with Canned Heat a little bit together, and so it's had a really special connection to us in our heart. And I think it was the Woodstock talk that we had 2 weeks ago, and then just recently we started throwing, you found something and threw it back up onto the page, and really started something that I think we're really loving right now. Yeah, 100%. This Woodstock craze. The Woodstock craze really continues. Really nice. Grunge Bible is still Woodstock Bible for now. And Ethan, I have to say, like the point that you made earlier when you were finishing up talking about Layne Staley, I think that parallels a lot of how we feel about these bands. You were like, I haven't listened to them a lot lately, but like once you start again, it all kind of comes back and it just kind of snowballs, and like you get to this point where like you can't stop listening to them. So for me, I experience all of those things when I listen and when I think about the bands that you just mentioned. Like you said, a lot of these bands, like there's no Grunge Bible if there's no Canned Heat, or if the band doesn't exist. And I think for me, a lot of this started a couple of weeks ago when we got the news that Robbie Robertson passed away. So he was an integral member of the band, and he was, one of their most prodigious songwriters. So he passed away, and that only leaves Garth Hudson left as, original members of the band. And, as oftentimes when it happens, when a musician passes away, or when an artist or a public figure, when they pass away, you always go back to their works and their accomplishments. And in our case with these musicians, you go back to their music. And, the band for me, like I hadn't listened to a whole lot of the band. Like they're always there. Like I enjoy them sometimes, when they come on, obviously, because you always run into a song like Up on Cripple Creek or The Weight. But, when an artist passes away, like, you really kind of reconnect with it. And I kind of forgot for a bit. And I was reminded when I went back to the music recently, just like how important their music is for me, and all of those emotions that we kind of felt at that time. Weirdly enough, the band, as time goes on, the band becomes more and more of a significant chunk of that soundtrack for me. And similarly, I think right after that,
for some reason or another, I think, no, that's what it was, because we saw posts, because this is the anniversary of Woodstock. This is the 54th anniversary, I think, like the 16th through the 18th, and we're on the 18th right now. So we started kind of looking back at Woodstock a little bit, especially after done the episode last week. And naturally we end up at Canned Heat, and it's the same thing. Like, you start going back into it and you forgot, and you're reminding yourself really just how significant the music is, and how good it is too.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. How really, really good it is. When we first got into Canned Heat, it was kind of like all of the lore behind these bands. You know, we looked at them and we saw them perform, and I think that was kind of like almost like satirical, that we started like liking them and getting into them. And then now it's like 10 years later, and we're going back, and these memories that were jokes at a little bit mean so much to us now. Like, it's like finally connecting the dots in a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like that weird thing. I feel like, especially when you're young, you don't really know the significance of something until time has passed. And I remember, like, a lot of our friendship was founded on music, but a lot of our musical interactions were kind of rooted in humor, and like we would make fun of certain things or just point out funny things. And I very vividly remember watching with you the Going Up the Country video of Canned Heat on YouTube. And this was back in the day where, like, all of the television shows, like the late night shows, they would have the musicians and the bands, they would have them stand there and pretend to play the instruments, and they would just play the studio track over top of it. And this video is absolutely hilarious. It's before Alan Wilson had passed away, so he was still there to sing Going Up the Country. But if you know the song, it starts out with a nice little flute riff, if you will. And I remember watching this video, and in the studio, Bob the Bear Height, who was on flute duty that day, he was so baked or something that he was playing the flute the wrong way, and like the backing track is playing over top, and like in the middle of one of his flute runs, he flips the flute around so it's actually facing the right way. The very first one. Like, he couldn't even start off correctly, and then like he stuck with it for a while, but like later on in the video, the flute is just like by his side while there's a flute part playing, and like he just stopped caring. And I remember, God knows how we discovered that video, but I remember it being hilarious. Like you and I watching it. It was the
funniest thing.
Yeah, we watched that over and over again of the flute part playing, and then Bob Height in the middle of it switching the flute around so it's actually correct.
Yes. And we joke about it so much, but then, like I said, we're coming back to them all these years later, or during that time we knew that they were like talented musically, but I feel like recently the music side of this band is shined through incredibly for me. And like, they're really, they're one of the earlier, first jam bands that led to,
totally
the history,
There's a direct
history
lineage
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's awesome listening to them to lay down the beat.
Yeah.
Dude. And the boogie.
That I just love.
They have it.
Yeah, I just love like the central focus on the boogie. Like, that's not something that people say anymore. But Canned Heat, like, if there was one thing they were about, I mean, how many of their songs had the word boogie in the title? I mean, there's fried hockey boogie, there's boogie sound, there's boogie music. I mean, it's all over the place.
Refried boogie.
Yeah, the refried boogie parts 1 and 2. I mean, they're just all over they're boogieing all over the place. But that's the thing. Like, we were drawn in by the humor of that one singular video, and it's like, this is kind of comical, like 60s music, right? Like, it's very 60s, right? And I remember, then you start watching other live videos and you see the characters, like Alan Wilson. He's got the greasy hair over, down to his eyes almost. He's got the glasses. He's got acne all over his face. But man, like, as time goes on, and like we started watching more videos, like how talented these guys were, and the more we read about it, like there's so many.
Go through the band, the people in them.
Absolutely.
The names are, like you said, you stopped at the Blind Out, but everybody had a name, and
they all had names.
A little nickname.
And Alan Wilson, he passed away in 1970. But Alan Wilson, I mean, so many experts and critically acclaimed thinkers and music people, they all say, like, he was one of the best bluesmen that ever existed. Like, I mean, his blues guitar, his harmonica, and his voice. Like, this man, he was a student of the blues. There was a rumor that he and Bob at one point owned, quote, the largest collection of blues material ever assembled. Which is,
that is such a claim.
I don't know how they decided that, but I wouldn't put it past the Blind Owl. He's from Boston, Massachusetts,
claim.
but he was a student. He was leading the band right alongside Bob the Bear Height.
Yes.
So we have a Blind Owl and we have a bear so far. And Bob Height, he was the first vocalist. I heard his lead singing on Canned Heat albums and songs before I heard the Blind Owls. Ethan, there was a movie when we were children. It was called Invincible. It was a Mark Wahlberg movie with the Eagles player Vince Papale, like coming off the streets and playing for the Eagles. They included "Let's Work Together" in that. In the soundtrack for the movie. And I remember at the time, that must have come out when I was like 10 or 11. I remember hearing, I was like, holy shit, like this is pretty good. You hear Alan's guitar and you hear Bob the Bear Height's vocals and how kind of raspy and brawny of a singer he is. I mean, the man was marked at 5'9", 370. And his voice
bear.
sounded every bit of that. He was just kind of... he was the perfect front and the perfect foil to, I think, Alan, because Alan was such like a kind of a reverent player of music, and the Bob is just there to boogie and have a good time.
Dude, and he does. I mean, he leads, and we were watching. You posted a few Woodstock clips, and the fan coming on the stage.
Change is gonna come. The fan comes on.
He comes on and gets the cigarette from Bob, but like the way that he works the crowd and is so into.
Yeah, he's just there to have a good time.
Yeah, you create this moment, and these are what these bands were so good during the Woodstock era, and I mean just bluegrass, and they make you feel and very involved, and I feel like those vocals that Bob gives, it's like kind of pulls you in, you kind of want to sing with them.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like
big bear hug.
Whenever the bear takes lead vocals on a blues song, like you've got the snarly guitar that Alan's playing. He's playing like a shitty, very heavily used Les Paul Gold Top, I think. Bob, you start getting the feet rocking a little bit when the drums come in, and the drummer Fido De La Parra. Ethan, I'd love it if you could kind of share some stuff about what you notice about his playing, because I made the point earlier this week that these bands in the 60s, Canned Heat, Creedence is another one, their drummers and their bassists, they laid the bottom down to songs so well. And it starts with Canned Heat. It starts with Fido behind the kit, who is the only remaining member of Canned Heat. Apparently they're still an entity, and he's the only one. He's still around.
Wow. And I know they're still playing, which is crazy. Dude, he's a lefty who plays like jazz, like traditional. So his right hand, it's so weird because I'm a righty, but his right hand is set sideways or underhand grip basically. Yeah. And the way it's like the bass drum is so steady, but not in like the music that you hear nowadays. It's steady and like it has that like thud behind it, thud that like, and it's like they're hitting the bass drum, but it's like almost they're stomping the floor. Really, it's not really a bass drum. It's just like they're stomping. And he obviously him and Larry the Mole, right? He's their bassist.
Larry the Mole Taylor.
Yes, like they have they do an incredible job laying it down in the back, and his drumming is perfect for it. Yeah, simple, simple, but so much groove. There's so much attitude to it that that's what happens, and that's what I feel like is just you watch these, the Woodstock clips specifically. It's just old camera, and it just the beat. You feel the music, and you don't get that from studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got to check out the live.
Yeah, you got to watch the live, and I particularly love the Woodstock set of Canned Heat, and I especially love watching the Mole work that bass guitar around, because he's into it. He's almost into it even more than the Bear, which is saying something because Bob is he's the headmaster of this whole thing. But I mean the Mole, he's got the bass. He's headbanging to his own music to Canned Heat, and he's got that gnarly mustache coming out. His hair's all over the place. It's it's grizzled, but I mean he was great, and the synergy that he had with the drummer there is really impressive watching live. So when it comes to go ahead.
Well, I want to say, but you know how the Bear, you say he almost feels it maybe, or he's moving just as much as the Bear, but I love when he's not singing, he's still jumping around and still kind of moving around. And he's
encouraging, when somebody will take a solo, like he's like cheering him on like it's a sporting event, which is really cool.
I love that. I love that when other people are soloing.
Absolutely.
They do that.
Who I've been introducing is Canned Heat's classic lineup. So there were two lead guitarists who were comprised, the first part of the classic lineup and the second. And Woodstock was actually kind of a line of demarcation between the two. So prior to Woodstock, on their first few albums, I believe, we had Harry the Sunflower Vestine on guitar. So we had the Sunflower just buzzing all over the place, but he actually left the band. Apparently what happened was they were booked on the bill for Woodstock, and they were beginning to rehearse for Woodstock, and the Sunflower he's like, we're not going to be ready. Like, this is not good. So he left the band. So the Sunflower's out. So they pulled the Sunflower up from the garden bed, right? So they replace him with Harvey the Snake Mandel, and it makes sense. A snake's coming through the garden after the Sunflower comes up. And Harvey's first gig for Canned Heat was Woodstock. That's unreal. Was Woodstock. Imagine cutting your teeth with a new band, with a new project at Woodstock.
Wow. That makes watching that just that much more
It's crazy.
impressive.
That's the first time, and this is the biggest crowd of their lives. That's the biggest crowd of anyone's life.
Guy's been jamming all of his life. Incredible.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And just getting out there. I mean, but yeah, like all of these guys, they complement one another so well. And something that is really astounding to me, and there were a lot of bands that were doing this, and there's a lot of bands that have the talent to do this. A lot of Canned Heat stuff, especially at that Woodstock set, it's all just 12-bar blues. So the fact that they can take something that is so common, and it's one of the most basic things you learn when you're making music, the fact that they can take that and make it unique and make it such an attention grabber still, and add a different spice and different layers to it, it's equal parts, I think, a testament to their charisma as it is to their technical skill with their instruments and their voices.
Yeah, 100%. I was listening to on the road performance, and that one was the one that really, I mean, that was like 10-minute jive that they do, and oh my gosh, really something else.
On the Road Again was great. I remember that was another one that like we quickly found, and we would always send back and forth to one another.
Oh man, I can't stress enough, man. The just watching the live performances have really helped. And
well, and that's something else that I'm just astounded by, like how high quality a lot of the remaining video footage from Woodstock is. I mean, shit, that was 54 years ago, and some of these videos, I love the way that they're shot. Like, there's some of the videos where they just seemingly told a cameraman, like, hey, take your camera and go out on stage and film them. And then there's others that are obviously, they're a little bit more pro shot, multiple camera angles and everything, but it's all been preserved really well. And how cool is it? Like, you pull up your phone and just watch from the stage at Woodstock, watch Canned Heat.
It is really something else. And then like that picture you posted of the cameraman in the face of Blind Owl being like so close. That's such a cool photo. And that they had the whereabouts to get on stage and be okay with it. Have some really great footage for later.
Yeah.
It make these nights of watching old film like so much fun because it's good quality.
Yeah.
Like,
and I have
really
to say,
really put you back there.
Yeah. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that they were one of the more talented bands of the 60s. And they're certainly the most overlooked band, I think, from that era.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, when you get into the jams and you start listening, I mean, they really had a feel, and they really could all play their instruments. So, I mean, Bob, dude, his harmonica playing is so
wild.
Good.
Wild.
Yeah, he really is so like, and he fits like when he comes out. I mean, I took some harp lessons back in the day, Chris. Some harmonica.
I wish I knew how.
And it was 3 miles in the back of the woods. Me and my friend went, and like it was behind his house. There was a deck, like no railings, just like a square piece of wood, like over grass. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you just like sat down in a circle, and like he would start teaching. And he looked just like the bear with grayer hair, like an older version. But the baggy pants and like the old Crocs or whatever, he's just ripping solos on the harmonica.
Dude, the blues style harmonica, I mean, it's so perfect. And something, Ethan, that we were talking about, because this has been this has been a nightly occurrence this week. You know, we get home from the day, and we've been watching Canned Heat videos, and we had the discussion, like, you know, so we're currently 26 and 28. Next month we'll be 27 and 29. We're at the point now where we watch a lot of these performances, and the people that we're watching, at that time of the performance, they're our age or they're younger. And I was shocked to notice and to come to the understanding that Bob Height at Woodstock was younger than I am today, sitting here in front of you.
It's really unbelievable.
Dude,
he looks
Alan
so
Wilson
old
too. They all look so old. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's what the 60s did to you. And case in point, I mean, a lot of them, I mean, Bob Height overdosed, and Alan Wilson struggled with a lot of different things. And, you know, that was the era, you know, a lot of it. I mean, it's just, you don't have to look far at all, even just at Woodstock. I mean, Janis, Jimmy, and so on, you know?
Yeah. Yep. It was the time and place territory. It was kind of it's a tough world to live in, I think. Not that it's not hard now, but I think it was probably tough in that scene. Yeah, man, they are something else. I'm really excited to get together with you and listen to it in person and be able to, I really want to go to, like, I don't know who's playing stuff like that out there. If you're listening and you have some really good, you know, some
my God,
backbeat and some festivals, I need to go feel the music, like, in person, you know, because it gets whole nother sense. So we need to do that together sometime.
Oh yeah, that would be unbelievable. That's what
you
need,
like,
sometimes.
some real blues area. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. The blues. Oh my God, it's so good, and that's the cool thing, because like all music, in my opinion, and I've said this before on the show, and I've said this to you before, like all music, popular music currently has the blues to thank, and it all comes from the blues. So it's cool. Like, you see so many people, I think, like, they start kind of going down that path in reverse, and they find their way back. And Canned Heat's one of the perfect bands. It's like you listen to them, and then you go back and you listen to a lot of the stuff that came before them, you know, the Delta blues stuff of the, you know, the turn of the century type stuff. And, you know, it all kind of has its roots there. But I mean, that's in the same way that Canned Heat, and particularly Alan Wilson, was a student of the blues. Like, I kind of think about what Petey said on the podcast when we interviewed him about Death Cab, when he was like, that was a band that, like, I had a desire to learn everything about them. Like, I kind of feel that way about Canned Heat right now.
100%. Yeah, dude. I want to watch more interviews. I want to hear, like, Alan speak more. And like hear what they're thinking and stuff.
Well, and the other thing too,
get into it.
The people forget about Alan Wilson is he was a devoted ecologist too, and he wrote the song "Poor Moon" to raise awareness and advocacy for the moon and fighting against moon pollution. And that song, oh my good, is chilling.
I'm gonna listen to that. I can't wait to listen to that after this.
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to that, and I'm gonna listen to his solo performance of "Sloppy Drunk."
Yep, that was
on piano. He was a pianist too. He could do everything. But
yep, that's definitely gonna be my song of the week. Sloppy Drunk.
These were principled men, Ethan. They were men, who died before their time.
So if you're listening, I really strongly encourage you to go watch some of the Woodstock performances.
Oh, yeah.
Get into the Canned Heat zone, but also listen to some Alice in Chains, listen to Layne celebrate his birthday, his day. And yeah, dude, good time, good suggestions between the two bands. Very different at times, but can both offer you a lot.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it was interesting too, because when we went into this episode, I think we were like, you know, when we get to the Woodstocky part of it, like, let's talk about some Canned Heat and then maybe some Creedence and the band and whatnot. And we started there, but man, it did not take long to kind of zero in on Canned Heat. And do you think Layne knew who Canned Heat were?
I think so. I think Jerry definitely did.
I think Jerry definitely.
He probably he maybe showed Layne.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope so.
And hopefully we're showing people about Canned Heat right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's some good deep dives there, some fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. Ethan, I'm not sure if you remember this, but right before we left Pittsburgh, you went to a record store or like a comic store or something, and you bought a bunch of used CDs, and you gave me like 4 of them, and Canned Heat's Greatest Hits was one of them.
Now that you say that, I do remember buying a can. I remember that. I did not remember that until you just brought that up, but I vaguely remember something of like seeing a canned heat thing and be like, I need to get this for Chris for some reason.
You got me that, and like I think you got me a Bob Dylan CD and maybe something else, but I very vividly remember the canned heat one because the following couple of summers, like I would just have it in my car, and then when I went to college with my car, like I just had it in my car, and I'd put on canned heat, and Fried Hockey Boogie was, I think, the last song on that CD.
Hits.
Yeah, their greatest hits, the Fried Hockey Boogie. But yeah, man, like you gave me that CD. I still have it. I think it's back at my mom's house. So
if I had known then what I know now,
I know that's the thing.
I had no idea what I was doing, basically.
Yeah, no, just like we talked about, you never know the significance until sometimes you need a little bit of time to pass to learn it.
Yeah,
and here we are. In 2023, regaling about something that we had an interaction with 9 years ago, except now we're doing it in front of potentially thousands of people on a podcast.
And Chris, I can't wait to do it in 10 more years, we can talk about this time.
Fuck. Yes, I can't wait, man.
I know. Sounds bad.
Good. But we probably do without the podcast in 10 years, though, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way, right?
There's a slim chance.
It would be like once every 3 months or something.
Yeah, but we'd have to do something. But that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, so if you're still listening, thank you so much. Please like, share, and help us gain some traction with the pod. Yeah. I think we're gonna have some big things coming, as we like to say, because there's a lot coming down. The fall is gonna be really exciting. I think that it's a pretty jam-packed fall. So can't wait.
Big things coming soon. A major announcement on the way.
So if we're doing songs of the week, I think that Sloppy Drunk is a really fun one.
Okay.
It's just a really good listen for the people that want to maybe dive into some Alan Wilson. I think we think it's important. So check that out. It's fun. Absolutely. And I'm going to counter that up. I think Fried Hockey Boogie is a song of the week. And I love it because, in my opinion, if I remember correctly, the sunflower's on that song, not the snake. So if you want the snake, you got to go watch Woodstock. But what I love about this song, it's like 9 or 10 minutes long, and it's a jam song, and every member of the band gets their chance to jam. And before they jam, Bob the Bear Height introduces them. He's like from Boston, Massachusetts, and he gives a little anecdote, and he's like Alan Wilson, and Alan plays guitar for a while, and then dude, the mole jams, Barry the Mole Taylor jams. So I think it's got to be the Fried Hockey Boogie. Dude, that's how it was. Like, when we had those lessons, we did like circles, and it was like, I'm not soloing. All right, Ethan, you're up. But I was like, I'm not soloing, and the man's like, just do it, brother. He's like, no one cares. He said, this is the fun part. You know what I mean? He's like, this is. Like, it doesn't matter if you're good or bad. Just take your solo. Like, let's go around the circle. And good solo. Cool. Good soloing stops when you begin to think. Yeah, you just gotta let it go. Exactly. That's what this episode was, a solo. And once we stopped to think, once you take a second to think, it's all completely over. It's all over. Yeah. All right, guys. We will see you next week, same time, same place, for another episode of the Grunge Bible Podcast. But until then, stay heavy and rock and roll. And listen to some canned heat.